Today, we're diving into a very hot topic. It's been hot for quite a while, and that is the idea of writing to market. What does it mean? How do you do it? Why is it important? Hey, what's up, amazing writers? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Tom Levine. I'm an award-winning hybrid author with 9 novels originally published with imprints of Penguin, Random House, Simon & Schuster, and other New York publishers, as well as a number of independently published books. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly does writing to market mean? It's about aligning stories that you've either already written or more likely are planning to write and aiming them towards a specific audience, aiming specific genres and categories to readers who are hungry for that particular genre or topic or category. It sounds very simple, but obviously, as with everything in this industry, there's a lot more to it. So the first thing we need to understand is understanding genre expectations. We all read different genres of fiction. That could be romance or action adventure, thriller, horror, or literary. There's any number of genres. We should also distinguish at this point between genre and category. A genre is something you're going to see mostly in a bookstore, an actual physical bookstore. The easiest way to think about that is what is the sign up above the bookshelves in your local bookstore? That is mostly a genre. If, on the other hand, you're browsing through an online retailer like the big elephant in the room, Amazon, those are categories. If you've ever seen a book or you're familiar with the idea of books that have these long, long strings of what look like genres, that's called a long tail category. And that's the kind of thing you want to be aware of as you look into writing to market. These are things, these genre expectations or category expectations, are things that readers are expecting out of their novel. This is going to impact your choice of cover. This is going to impact how you approach the book. In a lot of cases, it might impact whether you are using first person or third person. It might impact whether you're using one perspective or multiple perspectives. There's all kinds of considerations when you start looking to write fiction for a specific um, for a specific reader, for a specific genre or category. For instance, and this is something I have had to learn myself, just because there are characters who have a love story in your novel, that doesn't make it romance. All right? Particularly in that category, it's really important that you get that right. Romance means, by its very genre definition, that there will be, at the minimum, a happily for now ending, or 9 times out of 10, a happily ever after ending. That is what the genre expects. That is what readers expect. That is what readers demand. And if you go into a novel where that isn't the ending of your love story between these characters, guess what? You may have written an amazing book, and you probably did, but is it a romance? No, it's not, and you haven't written for the romance market. Let's talk about a category like fantasy, for example. Again, there may be a love story in your fantasy novel. You might have heard recently about this romantasy, or combining elements of fantasy and romance into one book. That's cool, but guess what? Your main characters, these two people who are falling in love, still need to have a happily for now or a happily ever after ending with then elements of fantasy. Just because I set my romance novel in, I don't know, let's just say medieval Europe, for example, cool, that's historical romance. That's not romantasy. That's not fantasy. Fantasy requires magic of some kind. It could be high magic, it could be low magic, it could be high technology, low technology, doesn't matter. But there should be, or in our case, really, there must be some element of the fantastic, hence the term fantasy. So these are the kinds of things you need to be aware of. One of the simplest and most direct ways to know if that's what you're doing, if you are writing for market, is, are you reading it? Because if you're not reading in the genre you wish to publish in, there's probably going to be a problem. There's probably going to be many, many missteps along the way. Can it be done? Yeah, sure, you can read about it. But to really fully understand and appreciate the genres and categories that you're looking for, that you want to write for, you should be reading in those genres and categories. One of the easiest ways to kind of do that is when you are reading, you have to look at the book you're reading from a different point of view. In my courses, I talk a lot about wearing different hats. Sometimes it's the author hat, sometimes it's the CEO hat, sometimes it's the marketer hat, right? All authors have these different hats. There is a time, perhaps it's late at night or whenever you like to do your casual for fun reading, there is, of course, time to just read the book and enjoy it, and I totally recommend doing that. But at some point, you need to step back and take a pencil, and if you're dealing with an actual physical book, get a copy of the book that you don't mind writing in, because you need to take notes on the things that are actually happening in this book. How big are the paragraphs? What kind of language is being used? How long are the chapters? How many chapters? How many pages? What do you think the word count? Uh, count a few pages of words and then multiply that out. You have to know these things in order to successfully write to market. So dive into your favorite books, dive into those categories and those genres you want to write for, and literally take notes on all these kinds of things. What are some of the plot elements? What are some of the theme elements? Once you start sort of a notebook of these ideas, do you start to see things that repeat in your favorite genres? I promise you'll start to see these things in romance, in thriller, in mystery, and in fantasy and science fiction. And then as you branch out into subcategories, let's say military science fiction, right? Science fiction is a genre. Military sci-fi kind of is its own category underneath science fiction, right? So you need to know what are the differences between those two categories. And the best way to do that, again, is to read and take notes. Now, one of the big fears people have about writing to market is they say, "Oh no, it's gonna ruin my creativity, and I won't have any room to create what I want and do what I want." I don't think that's accurate. As an author who has been professionally working in this industry since about 2007, 2008, I can tell you this: having guidelines, having a roadmap, whether that's an outline or whether that's an informal sort of idea of where things are going, it's actually not as limiting as you think. And in fact, I have found it to be much more freeing. Once you have those genre expectations and you can write them down in a document and say, okay, here's the magic system for my fantasy, or here's the science fiction element for my science fiction book, whatever the case may be for your genre. Once you have these things listed out, it is easier to then come up with stories. You won't find yourself going off into the weeds. You'll find it easier to develop characters. What kind of character would be in this scenario? Well, this kind of character. It's the one that I see all the time. All right, I'm going to take that character, and now maybe I might subvert that character a little bit, or I might change this element or that element of the genre, but I'm still going to fall within the reader's expectations. Have a list like that. It is very freeing in my experience, because now you don't have to go off and just wander around endlessly for months, or heaven help us, even years, which I have done. I've done both, trying to figure out what the story is and where the story is going. So it's not a bad thing. It is not going to limit your creativity. Having said that, if you get really persnickety about that, like, well, I don't want to have these kind of restrictions, that's fine. Then don't. Just sit down, open your document, and start going and see where the day takes you. That's totally fine. What I would recommend, though, if you want to write to market, which will increase your odds of selling the book very well on a platform like Amazon, then start off, jump in, enjoy yourself, go wherever the breeze happens to take you. But then at some point, maybe 10,000 words in, maybe even 50,000 words, depending, you decide. But at some point, look at what you've got and then apply those genre expectations, those conventions to what you've got so far, and see if you can massage or manipulate or revise that story into a genre and into meeting those reader expectations. Totally fine too. So that's just a quick, brief overview of what writing to market is all about. It is a valuable and very powerful element of your fiction writing career that you should, in my opinion, pay attention to. By the way, it's going to apply whether you're doing traditional fiction or independent fiction or a hybrid, whichever way you're going. Knowing that market, knowing those expectations is going to be crucial to your success. I myself have set out to say, oh, I'm going to write a thriller, dun, 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 and run off and written this, 90,000 word book, only to discover it's not a thriller at all. In fact, it turns out it's literary fantasy, or who knows, anything other than what I set out to do, because I wasn't familiar with the conventions. I wasn't familiar with the expectations, and worse, I hadn't read in the genre. That's the thing that's going to kill you every time, every time. So I hope this is a good, helpful overview for you, some things to kind of think about. Leave a comment down below, ask a question, and we'll be sure to get back to you. And just remember, whatever you do, the number one thing to further your writing career, writing the market or otherwise, is to keep writing. All right, we'll see you next time.